What happens when a sharp-tongued talk show host tries to undermine a powerhouse entrepreneur on live TV? Simone Jackson's response left everyone speechless. Simone Jackson was no ordinary entrepreneur. By the age of 32, she had not only forged a thriving business empire from the ground up, but had intentionally woven community upliftment into its very fabric. Hailing from Birmingham, Alabama, Simone lived by a powerful conviction. Her personal success held little meaning unless it actively opened doors for others. This belief manifested in her latest endeavor, a groundbreaking initiative designed to equip young Black women with vital entrepreneurial mentorship and resources. So, when an invitation arrived to appear on The Morning Perspective, one of the nation's most watched talk shows, Simone was more than thrilled. She saw it as an unparalleled opportunity, a chance not just to highlight the inspiring stories of the young women her initiative was empowering, but to demonstrate to a national audience the boundless potential unleashed by determination, raw talent, and unwavering community support. The show's host, Charlotte Whitaker, was a formidable and polarizing figure. Renowned for her razor-sharp tongue and an almost uncanny knack for stirring controversy, Charlene was equally respected and notorious across the media landscape. Yet Simone felt no apprehension. She had navigated challenges far more daunting than a combative interviewer. This, she knew, was her moment, and she was absolutely determined to make it count. The day of the interview dawned, and Simone arrived at the Los Angeles studio, radiating confidence in a vibrant teal suit that perfectly mirrored her inherent energy. The makeup artist remarked on her undeniable glow, and Simone, despite a subtle flutter of nerves just beneath the surface, offered a genuine smile. Stepping on to the brightly lit set, she inhaled deeply, taking in the controlled chaos, the low hum of audience chatter, the whir of cameras, and the focused bustle of production staff. From her usual spot, Charlene flashed Simone a wide, toothy grin, one that, Simone noted, didn't quite reach her eyes. "Simone Jackson, ladies and gentlemen," Charlene announced, her voice booming across the studio, met by enthusiastic applause from the live audience. "A self-made businesswoman who says she's rewriting the rules of entrepreneurship. Simone, welcome." Simone, with her trademark poise, leaned into the introduction. Her warm, confident smile lit up her face as she responded. "Thank you, Charlene. I'm so happy to be here and truly excited to share a bit about the transformative work we're doing." The initial minutes unfolded pleasantly enough. Simone eloquently recounted her inspiring journey, detailing her path from a teenager meticulously selling custom jewelry at flea markets to the formidable owner of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Charlene nodded, appearing to listen intently, occasionally interjecting with seemingly innocuous questions. Yet an almost imperceptible shift in Charlene's tone began to prick at Simone's awareness. As the conversation gracefully pivoted to Simone's deeply community-focused initiative, the host's compliments started to carry an unsettling, subtly backhanded edge. "So, Simone," Charlene began, tilting her head in that exaggerately curious, almost patronizing way that had become her infamous trademark, "do you truly think programs like yours are necessary necessary because people aren't working hard enough on their own?" The air in the studio thickened, a palpable tension descending. Simone paused, her calm demeanor unwavering, her gaze steady. "Well, Charlene," she began, her voice even and clear, "it's not about people not working hard enough. It's about recognizing the systemic barriers that exist and creating pathways for others to thrive despite those barriers. Her concise answer was met with polite applause from the audience, but Charlene's grin only widened, as though Simone had just handed her the perfect opening. Little did Simone know the interview was about to take a sharp, unexpected turn. Charlene leaned forward in her chair, her fingers lightly tapping the glossy surface of the table. "I hear you," she conceded with a nod that felt more rehearsed than sincere. "But don't you think focusing on systemic barriers can sometimes sound like an excuse? I mean, plenty of people pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? Isn't that what the American dream is all about?" A soft murmur rippled through the audience. Some clapped, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Simone noticed a few furrowed brows among the crowd, but she held her composure. She had been here before, not on national television, but in classrooms, boardrooms, and even family gatherings where this same rhetoric was tossed around like an unshakable truth. Simone offered a calm yet resolute smile. "Charlene," she began, "the idea of the American dream is beautiful, in theory. But it doesn't account for the fact that some people have more hurdles to jump than others. A pair of boots is great, but what if those boots don't have laces? Or worse, what if they've been stolen before you even get a chance to wear them?" Laughter and enthusiastic applause erupted from a section of the audience, and Simone seized the moment, adding, "What my program does is give people their laces back. It doesn't tie their shoes for them, but it makes sure they have what they need to take that crucial first step." Charlene's smile tightened, her eyes darting briefly toward the producers behind the cameras, as if silently strategizing her next move. Simone had undeniably scored a point, but Charlene wasn't about to back down. "Well," Charlene said, her voice syrupy but with a distinct, subtle edge, "that's a clever analogy. But some might say that focusing so much on race and inequality just creates more division. Don't you think we should be focusing on unity instead of constantly pointing out differences?" Simone tilted her head, her expression thoughtful, her words deliberate. "Unity sounds wonderful," she agreed. "But it's hard to build a bridge without first acknowledging the river you're trying to cross. Ignoring differences doesn't make them go away, it just leaves people stranded on opposite shores." Another wave of applause rippled through the audience. Louder this time. Even Charlene seemed momentarily taken aback, her polished facade cracking for just a fraction of a second. But she quickly recovered, her tone turning more pointed. "That's fair," she conceded. "But let's talk specifics. Your program is targeted specifically at young black women. Why not open it up to everyone? Isn't that exclusionary?" Simone felt a small twinge of irritation, but she refused to let it show. This question wasn't new. She had been asked it dozens of times before, often by people who didn't understand, or didn't want to understand the importance of tailored solutions for marginalized communities. "It's not exclusionary," Simone stated, her voice steady and clear. "It's intentional. When you know where the gaps are, you address them directly. If a house has a leak in the roof, you don't fix the whole house. You start where the problem is. My program is about addressing a very specific need. And by doing that, we're lifting up entire communities." The audience clapped again, and Simone could feel the energy subtly shifting in her favor. But Charlene wasn't done. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms as if preparing for the next round. "Well," Charlene said, her voice tinged with a mix of skepticism and feigned curiosity, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but some might say programs like yours promote dependency. How do you respond to that? Simone raised an eyebrow, the faintest hint of a smile playing on her lips. She knew what Charlene was doing, pushing buttons, stirring the pot. But she wasn't about to give the host the satisfaction of losing her composure. Even as Simone held her ground, the tension in the room was about to reach a boiling point. Simone's subtle smile remained firmly in place, but her gaze sharpened, locking onto Charlene with laser focus. The host's words had done their job. They'd ruffled feathers, not just in the audience, but within Simone herself. Still, Simone had no intention of letting Charlene dictate the narrative. Dependency, Simone repeated, her voice calm but edged with a quiet strength. Let me ask you something, Charlene. When banks give out loans to help new businesses get started, is that promoting dependency? Or is it providing resources to people who are trying to grow and succeed? Charlene opened her mouth to respond, but Simone wasn't done. Because that's what this program does? It's an investment. It's giving young women the tools they need to stand on their own, to create opportunities not just for themselves, but for others. Dependency isn't the problem here. Lack of opportunity is. The audience erupted into applause, louder and more sustained this time. Even a few members of the production crew behind the cameras were nodding along in agreement. Charlene's polished facade began to crack just a little more. She adjusted her posture, crossing her legs tightly, and tilted her head in a way that seemed more defensive than genuinely inquisitive. Well, Simone, Charlene said, her voice now slightly clipped. You make a good point, but surely you understand why some people feel left out when programs are so narrowly focused. We're living in a time when everyone wants to feel included, don't you think? Simone's smile faded slightly, not out of frustration, but out of a quiet, steel-like determination. She leaned forward, her hands clasped in front of her. Charlene, she said, her voice soft but unwavering. Inclusion is important, but it doesn't mean ignoring the unique challenges that some groups face. If a child is struggling in school, you don't hold the entire class back so that everyone feels the same. You give that child the extra support they need so they can catch up. And when they do, guess what? The entire classroom benefits. There was a beat of silence in the studio, the kind of silence that felt heavy, charged with the weight of something undeniable. But Charlene wasn't ready to back down. She smirked, leaning back in her chair, her eyes gleaming with the kind of challenging glint that had made her infamous. Interesting perspective, she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. But let me ask you this, Simone. Do you think focusing so much on race might actually, I don't know, perpetuate division? Don't you think it would be better to just focus on what unites us? Simone's lips parted slightly, but before she could answer, Charlene added, I mean, some might say programs like yours are just another form of segregation. Isn't that ironic? The words hung in the air like smoke. The audience gasped audibly, and a few people even shook their heads in disbelief. For the first time, Simone let a flicker of emotion cross her face. Something between incredulity and exasperation. She glanced toward the audience as if drawing strength from their visible reactions before turning her full, unwavering attention back to Charlene. What's ironic, Charlene? Simone said slowly. her voice now carrying the weight of something deeply personal, is how people will twist the idea of equity into something it's not. Segregation was about exclusion, about denying people access. What I'm doing is the exact opposite. I'm opening doors that were slammed shut for generations. She paused, letting the profound truth of her words settle before continuing. And you know what's really ironic? The fact that when people like me try to fix the damage done by those systems, we're accused of being divisive. But the truth is, we can't fix a problem if we refuse to acknowledge it exists. The audience broke into thunderous applause, some even standing to their feet. Charlene's expression froze for a split second before she quickly composed herself, plastering on a strained, almost brittle smile. But just when it seemed like Simone had delivered the final decisive blow, Charlene took things one step further, escalating the tension to a breaking point. Charlene sat back, her face composed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of frustration. She had clearly underestimated Simone. The audience's roaring applause had undeniably shifted the room's energy, and for a moment, it was clear Charlene was scrambling to regain control of the narrative. "Well, Simone," Charlene began, her tone smooth but with a sharp edge, "you seem to have an answer for everything, but let's be real for a moment. There are people out there, hard-working, struggling people, who might look at what you're doing and wonder, what about us? How do you justify leaving them behind? How is that fair?" Simone blinked, surprised not by the question itself, but by its blatant attempt to paint her as the villain. Her jaw tightened briefly, just enough for anyone paying close attention to notice. Then, just as quickly, her expression softened, replaced with a calm determination that made it clear she wasn't rattled. She leaned forward slightly, her voice carrying an unmistakable edge of clarity and resolve. "Fair." Simone repeated the word, imbuing it with a quiet, deliberate power. "Charlene, let me ask you this. When a firefighter puts out a burning house, do we accuse them of being unfair to the houses that aren't on fire? Or do we thank them for protecting the neighborhood?" The studio fell silent. Not the uncomfortable kind of silence, but the kind that pulls everyone to the edge of their seats. Even the crew members standing behind the cameras stopped what they were doing, their eyes fixed on Simone. "That's what this program is, Charlene," Simone continued, her tone unwavering. "It's about putting out fires. It's about addressing the specific needs of people who've been ignored, overlooked, and underserved for far too long. And when we lift them up, when we give them a chance to thrive, it doesn't take anything away from anyone else. It adds to the community as a whole." Charlene opened her mouth as if to respond, but Simone raised a hand. Not rudely, but firmly enough to let Charlene know she wasn't finished. "And let's not pretend," Simone added, her voice now carrying the weight of years of experience and deep conviction, "that these conversations about fairness are ever really about fairness. Because when we talk about fairness, what we're really talking about is comfort. Whose comfort are we protecting? Whose discomfort are we willing to ignore? And if addressing injustice makes some people uncomfortable, then maybe that's a discomfort we should all learn to live with." The audience exploded. The clapping, cheering, and standing ovations weren't just loud. They were deafening. Simone sat back in her chair, her composure intact, but her eyes revealed the quiet fire burning inside her. She had said her piece, and she knew it had landed exactly where it needed to. Charlene, on the other hand, was visibly flustered. Her carefully crafted image of control had started to crack. She fumbled for her water glass, taking a quick sip before forcing a strained laugh. "Well, Simone," she said, her voice slightly clipped, "you're certainly passionate. I can see why your program has so many supporters. But let me ask you—" Simone cut her off, politely but firmly. "Before you ask me anything else, Charlene, let me ask you something," she said, leaning forward. The shift in energy was palpable. The audience leaned forward with her. "When you hear stories about people pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, do you ever stop to ask, who made the boots in the first place? And who decided which ones were worth investing in?" Charlene froze. The question wasn't just rhetorical, it was surgical, cutting straight to the core of the narrative she'd been pushing. The audience was silent again, but this time it wasn't for Simone to finish. It was for Charlene, who clearly had no answer. But as Simone's words echoed through the studio, what happened next made it clear that this moment would be remembered far beyond this one interview. For what felt like a lifetime, Charlene sat there, her usually sharp tongue utterly still. Her practiced composure faltered as her mouth opened slightly. But no words came out. The camera zoomed in on her face, catching the awkward pause, while Simone sat calmly, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her expression a picture of grace under fire. The audience was electric. Whispers and murmurs buzzed through the crowd like static before someone finally yelled, "Say it louder!" The room erupted into laughter and applause. Simone smiled warmly, the moment hers to own. Charlene finally managed to stammer out a response. "Well, Simone, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on some points," she said, her voice tight, her usual confidence now replaced with a strained civility. "But I do appreciate your perspective." Simone didn't miss a beat. "And I appreciate the opportunity to share it," she replied, her tone polite, yet firm. A master class in grace under pressure. The producers cut to commercial, but by then the damage had been done. The live audience was abuzz, their reactions spilling onto social media before the cameras even stopped rolling. The hashtags Simone, Jackson, and Morning Perspective began trending within minutes, with clips of Simone's sharp responses being shared across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. "She said what needed to be said," one tweet declared, racking up thousands of likes. Another video clip captioned, "Putting out fires, not ignoring them," was quickly reposted by influencers, activists, and even a few celebrities. Backstage, Simone sat in her dressing room, taking a moment to breathe. Her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, texts from friends, emails from supporters, and tags from strangers praising her eloquence and courage. She scrolled briefly, her heart swelling as she read messages from young women thanking her for her words. But the moment wasn't without its detractors. Some commenters accused her of being divisive, claiming she was too aggressive or not fair. Simone had seen it all before, though. She knew these criticisms weren't about her tone or tactics. They were about her refusal to shrink herself, to make others more comfortable. And she had no intention of apologizing for that. Later that evening, as she sat in her hotel room overlooking downtown Los Angeles, Simone reflected on the day. The interview had been challenging, sure, but it had also been an unparalleled opportunity to speak truth to power. She thought about the young women her program was helping, girls who might one day watch that interview and see a reflection of themselves in her strength, resilience, and unapologetic authenticity. Her assistant knocked on the door, poking her head in with a beaming smile. "You're everywhere right now," she exclaimed. "CNN just picked up the story. They're calling it one of the most powerful live TV moments of the year." Simone smiled faintly, shaking her head. "It's not about me," she said quietly. "It's about the message." Her assistant nodded, holding up Simone's phone. "Still, you might want to see this. Beyoncé just shared the clip." Simone laughed, the weight of the day briefly lifting. "Well," she said, "I guess I can't argue with Queen Bey." The buzz surrounding the interview didn't die down for weeks. News outlets dissected the moment, think pieces debated its impact, and social media continued to amplify Simone's words. But for Simone, it wasn't about the headlines or the viral clips. It was about the young women who now knew that someone out there was fighting for them, carving out space for them in a world that too often tried to shut them out. And in the end, that was the real victory. But even as Simone prepared to move forward, she knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, Simone woke to a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Every notification was another story, another mention, another opportunity for her words to ripple further than she ever imagined. But she wasn't basking in the attention. Instead, her mind was already racing with the next steps. How to use this momentum to push her program forward, how to amplify the voices of the women she was working so hard to support. By noon, she was back in her hometown, greeted by a group of young women from her program who had been waiting at the community center. One of them, a 19-year-old named Aaliyah, approached her with tears in her eyes. "Miss Simone," she said softly, clutching her phone, "I watched the interview last night. I watched how you stood up for us, for all of us. And I just want to say thank you. You made me feel like I can do anything." Simone smiled, her heart full. "Aaliyah," she said, placing her hand on the young woman's shoulder, "you don't need me to make you feel that way. That power, it's already inside you. All I'm doing is giving you the tools to see it for yourself." Later that day, Simone addressed a small group of participants in her program, sharing what had happened on the talk show and the profound lessons she had learned. "Here's the thing," she said, her voice steady but full of passion. "The world isn't always going to hand you respect or fairness. Sometimes you'll have to demand it. Sometimes you'll have to fight for it. And when that happens, I want you to remember one thing. Your story, your voice, and your worth are not up for debate. Ever." The room was silent, but it was a silence filled with understanding and fierce determination. Simone could see it in their faces. These young women were ready to take on the world, and that was all the confirmation she needed that the work she was doing truly mattered. As Simone walked out of the building that evening, the sun setting behind her, she took a moment to reflect. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been challenges, roadblocks, and moments of doubt. But through it all, she had stayed true to her purpose, to create change, to inspire others, and to leave the world a little better than she had found it. Simone's story is a powerful reminder that standing up for what you believe in isn't always comfortable, but it is always undeniably necessary. Whether it's on a national stage or in your own community, your voice has the power to spark profound change. Don't let fear of discomfort or criticism stop you from speaking your truth. If Simone's journey resonated with you, take a moment today to think about how you can make a difference in your own community. Whether it's mentoring someone, starting a project, or simply standing up for what's right, Your actions, big or small, can inspire others to do the same. Together, we can all be a part of creating the change we want to see.